"You're late," my mom, Carol, stated flatly as she stepped onto the porch, pulling a large suitcase behind her. Her tone held that familiar edge of impatience. I glanced at the clock on my car's dashboard. 6:02 a.m. "2 minutes, Mom," I said, forcing a smile as I got out to help with the luggage. But then, my smile froze. Emerging from the house behind my mother, dragging her own oversized suitcase, was my younger sister, Olivia. My heart skipped a beat, then started pounding. What's going on?" I asked, trying desperately to keep my voice steady, hoping this wasn't what it looked like. My mom turned to me, her expression suddenly far too bright, too cheerful for the situation. "Oh, Sophia, honey, we decided Olivia should come instead of you. She's been under so much stress lately, bless her heart, and she just really needs this European vacation." "Instead of me?" The words echoed in my head. This trip, the one I'd spent 2 years meticulously planning, saving every spare dime for, flights, luxury hotels, guided tours in Paris and Rome, all paid for by me. For us. If this sounds unbelievable, stick around and subscribe to Life Stories to see how Sophia handles this ultimate betrayal. My chest tightened, a familiar ache settling in. "Instead of me," I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "Mom, I planned this for years. I paid for everything." She waved her hand dismissively, as if I were pointing out a minor inconvenience, like forgetting to pack sunscreen. "And we are so grateful, sweetheart, truly. But you're always working so hard, buried in deadlines. You can take another trip later. Olivia needs this right now." Olivia, meanwhile, didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed or apologetic. She just leaned against the doorframe, shifting her weight onto one hip, offering a small, smug smirk. "Thanks for understanding, sis," she chimed in, her tone dripping with faux gratitude. "It's really big of you." I stared at them, my mother beaming, my sister smirking, my heart pounding a furious rhythm against my ribs. My dad, Richard, shuffled out a moment later, studiously avoiding eye contact as he handed me his suitcase, mumbling a quiet, "Morning, Sophia." "This is unbelievable," I finally managed, my voice trembling slightly despite my efforts. "This was supposed to be our trip. Something special for me to share with you both." "Well, it still is special, honey," my mom chirped, patting my arm. "Just with Olivia instead. Don't make this into a big deal, Sophia. Your sister really needs a break. My name is Sophia Miller, and for as long as I can remember, this has been the pattern. I work, I plan, I achieve, and somehow, Olivia, perpetually stressed, and often jobless, reaps the rewards. For the past 2 years, I'd poured countless overtime hours and every spare penny into crafting this dream European vacation for my parents, a thank you for, well, I wasn't sure anymore. But as I stood there in their driveway, watching Olivia toss her bag into the back seat of my car, a truth I'd long avoided slapped me in the face. No matter the effort, no matter the expense, in their eyes, Olivia would always, always come first. I clenched my jaw, biting back the scalding retort perched on my tongue. Years of practice allowed me to force a tight, brittle smile. "Okay," I said, my voice flat, devoid of the excitement I'd felt just minutes before. I opened the trunk. "Let's get this luggage loaded then. Wouldn't want you to be late." If they wanted to prioritize her, fine. They could have her. But I sure as hell wasn't going to let them enjoy the 5-star vacation I had planned for me on my dime with her in tow. The drive to the airport was suffocating. Silence stretched between me and my parents in the front, punctuated only by Olivia's incessant, bubbly chatter from the back seat. "Oh my gosh, Mom! Did you see that TikTok about the best croissants in Paris? I absolutely cannot wait to go shopping on the Champs-Élysées. Do you think we'll have time for that? Or will the guided tours take up, like, the whole day?" My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles turning white. I stared straight ahead, focusing on the road, forcing myself not to react, not to speak. My mom chuckled softly beside me. "Of course, we'll have time for shopping, honey. We'll figure it out when we get there." When we get there, I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. It was as if I, the driver, the planner, the financier, had already vanished from their equation. At one point, my dad cleared his throat awkwardly. "Thank you for driving us, Sophia," he murmured, his voice low. "I know this probably feels a bit unusual." I risked a glance at him in the rearview mirror. His eyes were fixed on his lap. "Unusual? That's certainly one way to put it, Dad," I replied, my voice tight. He didn't respond, just shifted uncomfortably, likely regretting he'd spoken at all. Olivia leaned forward, her voice gratingly cheerful. "You're not mad, right, Soph? I mean, this is really, really big of you, letting me go instead. I could never have afforded a trip like this on my own, you know?" I met her eyes briefly in the mirror, forcing another tight smile that felt like cracking porcelain. "Of course not, Olivia. Have a wonderful time. Enjoy the trip." By the time we pulled up to the airport drop-off zone, my patience was stretched thinner than a spider's thread. As I robotically helped unload their suitcases onto the curb, my mom pulled me into a brief, awkward hug. "Thank you for understanding, sweetheart," she whispered, patting my back. "This means so much to us, and especially to Olivia." I nodded stiffly, unable to form words. "Sure, Mom. Have a safe flight." Olivia beamed, grabbing her suitcase handle. "Thanks, Sophia. You're seriously the best," she chirped before wheeling her luggage towards the entrance, my parents trailing behind her. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, watching them disappear into the bustling terminal, a knot of anger, hurt, and betrayal tightening in my chest until it physically hurt to breathe. The drive back home was a blur of simmering rage. I replayed the morning's conversation, each dismissive word, each oblivious smile, cutting deeper. "This means a lot to Olivia. You're not mad, right? You're always working so hard." I parked in my driveway, but couldn't bring myself to get out immediately. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white, taking deep, ragged breaths. Then, a cold resolve settled over me. Without a second thought, I marched into the house, went straight to my office, pulled out my laptop, and logged into every single travel account I had used over the past 2 years. Expedia, Booking.com, Viator, the airline websites, hotel reservations across Paris and Rome, canceled, refund requested, guided tours of the Louvre and the Colosseum, canceled, refund requested, first-class upgrades on the intra-European flights, canceled, refund requested. The only thing I left untouched was their basic economy return flight ticket. Confirmation emails started piling up in my inbox. Cancellation successful, refund processing. With each notification, the suffocating tightness in my chest began to ease, replaced by a frosty sense of satisfaction. They wanted to take Olivia instead of me? Fine. Let them figure out how to navigate Europe on Olivia's non-existent budget. Let them explain to the concierge at the 5-star Parisian hotel why their reservation suddenly vanished. I closed my laptop. I was done being their safety net, their doormat, their afterthought. This time, they could handle the fallout themselves. The predictable storm began shortly after their flight would have landed in Paris. My phone, which I'd deliberately left on my nightstand while I unpacked the suitcase I'd so carefully prepared for a trip I was no longer taking, started buzzing incessantly. The irony wasn't lost on me as I methodically hung up the dresses I wouldn't wear strolling along the Seine and placed the new walking shoes I wouldn't need back on the shelf. Buzz, buzz, buzz. It filled the quiet room with a relentless, demanding vibration. With a sigh, I finally picked it up. My mother's name flashed on the screen, accompanied by a growing list of missed calls and unread texts. I unlocked the phone, bracing myself, and scrolled through the messages. "Sophia, what's going on? The hotel in Paris won't let us check in. They say the reservation is missing. Call me immediately." Followed quickly by, "Sophia, this isn't funny. Where are you? Fix this now." A choked laugh escaped me before I could stifle it. Fix this. After kicking me off my own meticulously planned prepaid trip, they actually expected me to swoop in remotely and solve the problem they had created? The audacity was breathtaking. The phone buzzed again, vibrating in my hand. This time, it was a call from Olivia. I let it ring, watching her name pulse on the screen, until it finally went to voicemail. A notification popped up immediately. Curious, I tapped. In sheet. Sophia, this is so petty, even for you. Olivia's voice snapped, dripping with the familiar entitlement I knew so well. We're stuck here in the hotel lobby because of you. You need to call the hotel right now and fix whatever you did. I rolled my eyes and deleted the voicemail without bothering to listen to the rest. For my entire adult life, I'd been their fixer, their go-to person for smoothing over mistakes, picking up the pieces, managing the logistics they couldn't be bothered with. Not this time, not anymore. Eventually, driven more by a desire to stop the incessant buzzing than any sense of obligation, I decided to answer the next incoming call from my mother. Her voice hit my ear like a tidal wave of fury the second I accepted the call. "Sophia, what did you do?" she practically shrieked. "The hotel says our reservation was canceled, and I just checked the tour confirmations. None of the tours are booked anymore. What is going on?" I let her rant for another moment, picturing her standing indignant in some Parisian hotel lobby, my father likely shifting awkwardly beside her, Olivia probably pouting. Then, when she paused for breath, I replied, keeping my voice deliberately calm and even. "I canceled them, Mom." There was a long, stunned silence on the other end of the line, so profound I could almost hear her processing the information. Then, her voice dropped to a dangerous hiss. Why would you do that?" "Oh, I don't know," I said, letting sarcasm lace my tone. "Maybe because you decided at the last possible second to take Olivia on the trip I planned and paid for instead of me? Frankly, you're lucky I didn't cancel your return flight and just left you stranded there." "We thought you'd understand," she snapped back, instantly defensive. "Understand what?" I asked, my own voice finally rising, the calm facade cracking. That 2 years of my saving, my planning, my dreaming about this trip meant absolutely nothing because Olivia needed a break? That my hard work, my generosity, it just doesn't count in your eyes? Well, guess what, Mom? I don't understand. And you know what? I don't care to understand anymore. I ended the call before she could utter another word, my finger jabbing the screen with satisfying force. Then, for good measure, I turned my phone off completely and tossed it onto the living room couch. The silence that descended felt glorious. Deeply, blissfully silent. For the first time in what felt like years, I felt like I could actually breathe again. They wanted Olivia? They got Olivia. But they could figure out and pay for the rest of their European vacation themselves. The blissful silence, predictably, lasted only about a day. By the next evening, curiosity and a lifetime of ingrained habit prompted me to turn my phone back on. It immediately lit up with a barrage of notifications, missed calls, voicemails, and a storm of text messages. I braced myself and scrolled through the latest texts. From Mom. "Sophia, you have gone too far. Your sister is in tears and your father is furious. We can't get into any of the hotels you booked. We're having to find cheap motels. This is humiliating." Followed by, "How could you do this to your own family? After everything we've done for you?" From Olivia. "You're acting like a spoiled child. I don't get why you're making this such a huge deal. It was just a misunderstanding. Just fix it already." And finally, a short, terse message from my dad. "We need to talk when we get back. This isn't right, Sophia." I set the phone down on the kitchen table, shaking my head slowly. For years, I'd been the family fixer, the designated adult, the one who smoothed ruffled feathers, managed crises, and ensured everyone else's comfort and happiness, often at my own expense. Now that I'd finally refused to play that role, refused to clean up a mess they had made, they were completely lost, bewildered, and outraged. How dare I not fulfill my designated function? I poured myself a cup of calming chamomile tea, sat down, and let the anger simmer, hot and cleansing. How dare they expect me to magically restore the luxury vacation they had stolen from me? How dare they frame me as the villain, the unreasonable one, the source of the problem? Their entitlement was staggering. The phone rang again just minutes later. Caller ID? Auntie. Steeling myself, I answered. Sophia! My mother barked before I could even manage a hello. This isn't funny anymore. We are stranded. We spent last night in some awful place outside the city. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? Trying to find last-minute accommodation in Europe? I took a slow, deliberate sip of my tea, letting the warmth spread through me. Embarrassing? I echoed coolly. You think this is embarrassing, Mom? Try saving for 2 years, planning every single detail of a dream trip down to the minute, only to be told at 6 a.m. on departure day that you're being replaced by your sister and aren't even invited anymore. That's embarrassing. That's humiliating. Stop being so dramatic, she snapped, falling back on her usual tactic of minimizing my feelings. Olivia needed this trip more than you did. You're successful. You can always go again. And now Olivia can figure out how to pay for it, I replied firmly, my voice steady. You made your decision, Mom. You wanted to take Olivia instead of me. Fine. I accepted that decision. But don't you dare expect me to continue funding her vacation, or yours, after you kicked me off my own trip. We're family, Sophia, she hissed, her voice tight with fury. We don't do this to each other. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Funny, I was just thinking the exact same thing when you told me Olivia was taking my place. From the background, I could hear Olivia's distinct whine. Mom, just hang up on her. She's being impossible. Just tell her to fix it. That was the final straw. The casual assumption that I could and should just fix it for them. Enjoy your trip, Mom, I said, my tone turning icy cold. Oh, wait. You can't, because it's not your trip. It was mine. And now, I paused for effect. It's nobody's. Goodbye. I ended the call decisively, my finger hitting the screen before she could sputter another word. Then, I turned the phone off again. For the rest of the evening, I felt a strange, turbulent mix of emotions. There was anger, righteous and simmering, that they had pushed me to this point. But beneath it, stronger and more surprising, was a profound sense of relief. Relief that I had finally stood up for myself, drawn a line in the sand, and refused to be taken for granted. They could call me dramatic, petty, or childish all they wanted. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't letting them walk all over me, and it felt unexpectedly, powerfully good. The next few days passed in a state of blissful, uninterrupted quiet. With my phone resolutely turned off, I finally had the mental space to breathe, think, and process, free from the constant barrage of guilt trips, accusations, and demands. I spent the morning sipping coffee slowly on my small back porch, watching the squirrels chase each other, simply enjoying the calm I'd unknowingly craved for so long. My afternoons were productive. I threw myself into work, catching up on projects, and tackled little organizational tasks around the house I'd been putting off, tangible reminders of my own competence when I wasn't constantly diverting energy to managing their needs and expectations. But inevitably, by the third day, curiosity, that persistent human itch, got the better of me. Taking a deep breath, I turned my phone back on. It immediately sprang to life, vibrating with notifications. Over a dozen new voicemails. I braced myself and started listening. The first few were from my mother, her tone growing increasingly hysterical, almost unhinged, with each message. Sophia, you need to call me back right now. This has gone entirely too far. I cannot believe you are doing this. You have humiliated us. Followed by the predictable, we are your parents. How could you treat us this way? Then came Olivia's contributions, laced with the same whining entitlement she'd perfected over years. This is so petty, Sophia, even for you. You are ruining everything. Why are you being like this? Just fix it. And finally, several messages from my dad, his voice quieter, less overtly angry, but carrying a heavy undercurrent of disappointment and bewilderment. Sophia, I don't understand what's happened to you. This isn't like you. Please call us back so we can sort this out. I hesitated before playing the final voicemail. It was a long one, again from my mother, but her voice was different this time, quieter, flatter, tinged with an unfamiliar exhaustion and defeat. "Sophia," she began, sighing heavily. "We're back at the airport now, in Paris. We're trying to change our flights to come home early. The trip is ruined, completely ruined, and I hope you're happy with yourself. Your sister is devastated, absolutely beside herself, and your father and I, well, disappointed, doesn't even begin to cover it. Call us when you're ready to talk." I deleted all the voicemails without replying. I wasn't ready to talk. And honestly, sitting there in the quiet of my kitchen, I didn't know if I ever would be, not on their terms anyway. This wasn't about one canceled trip. It wasn't a simple mistake or misunderstanding. It was the predictable, painful culmination of years upon years of them prioritizing Olivia, minimizing my contributions, and expecting me to silently accept my role as the reliable, overlooked, second-best daughter with a perpetual smile. As the hours passed, I found myself reflecting, really reflecting, on all those times. Every holiday plan rearranged at the last minute to accommodate Olivia's latest whim. Every family gathering where my career achievements were glossed over while Olivia's minor dramas took center stage. Every time I'd swallowed my hurt, smoothed things over, played the peacemaker just to avoid their disapproval or disappointment. This disastrous European vacation hadn't come out of nowhere. The cracks in our family foundation had been widening for years. I was just the only one who finally refused to keep plastering over them. That evening, my salvation arrived in the form of my best friend, Maya, who showed up unannounced at my door, carrying 2 large coffees and wearing an unmistakable expression of wry curiosity. "Okay," she said, setting the coffees on my kitchen table. "Spill, I heard about what happened. Your mom called me yesterday, you know." Of course she had. My mother was a master recruiter, adept at pulling others into her orbit when she wanted to apply pressure or triangulate a guilt trip. "And?" I asked, taking a grateful sip of the coffee. Maya shrugged, a sly smile creeping across her face. "And I told her you were probably incredibly busy catching up on work after planning her entire European vacation for her, and that you'd undoubtedly get back to her whenever you were ready." I burst out laughing, a genuine laugh that eased some of the tension I hadn't realized I was still holding. "You are the absolute best, Maya." "No," she countered, her tone suddenly serious, meeting my eyes across the table. "You are, because you finally stood up for yourself. I know how incredibly hard that is with your family, Sophia. Don't you dare let them drag you back down now." Her words resonated long after she left. Maya was right. I had spent far too much of my life bending over backwards, twisting myself into knots, trying to please people who seemed constitutionally incapable of appreciating my efforts or even acknowledging them. It was long past time to break that exhausting, soul-crushing cycle. Once and for all. By the time the weekend rolled around, a strange sense of clarity had settled over me. The anger hadn't vanished entirely. It still simmered beneath the surface, a low-burning ember. But it was now mingled with something brighter, something I hadn't felt in relation to my family in years. Freedom. Freedom from their constant, unspoken expectations. Freedom from the thankless role of the family's fixer and planner. Freedom, finally, to define my life on my own terms. But, as expected, the silence from their end didn't last. It was Sunday afternoon, a quiet lull in the day, when I finally got a call that I recognized wasn't fueled by immediate panic or rage. It was my dad. I decided to answer. "Sophia," he began, his voice heavy, weary. "Your mother wanted me to call. She thinks maybe you'll listen to me." "Go on, Dad," I said calmly, leaning back in my kitchen chair, determined to remain composed. He let out a long sigh. "Look, this whole thing. It's all gotten completely out of hand. Your mom's terribly upset, Olivia's furious, and frankly, quite miserable and, well, it's just a mess. But Sophia, you're better than this. I stiffened immediately, his words igniting a fresh wave of indignation. Better than what, Dad? Better than standing up for myself? Better than refusing to let you, Mom, and Olivia walk all over me yet again? No, that's not what I meant. He backpedaled quickly, sounding flustered. It's just, you've always been the reasonable one, haven't you? The planner. The one who keeps everything together, keeps the peace. This vindictive behavior, it just isn't like you. I laughed then, a short, sharp, bitter sound. You're absolutely right, Dad. It isn't like me, because for once, I'm not bending over backward to clean up your mess, a mess you created. He paused, and for a fleeting second, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, he was starting to see my side of things. But then he blew it. You're punishing the whole family over one decision, Sophia. Is that really fair? Fair? I repeated, my voice rising despite my best intentions. You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when you and Mom decided, without even consulting me, that I wasn't important enough to be part of the trip I planned and paid for? Was it fair when you replaced me with Olivia, like I was some interchangeable part, easily discarded? Was that fair, Dad? That's not what we were trying to do, he insisted, his tone turning defensive again. We just thought Olivia needed it more right now. Of course you did, I snapped, the years of resentment bubbling up. You always think she needs more attention, more support, more financial help, more of everything. And I'm always the one expected to sacrifice, to step aside, to make it happen for her. Well, guess what? Not anymore. The silence on the other end of the line stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Finally, he spoke, his voice flat. I don't know what you want me to say, Sophia. I don't need you to say anything, Dad, I replied, my voice steady again, reclaiming control. I just need you to understand, really understand, that I am done being the afterthought. From now on, I come first. Goodbye, Dad. I ended the call firmly and set the phone down, noticing my hands were trembling slightly. For the rest of that day, I allowed myself to feel the whirlwind, the anger, the sadness, the profound relief. It wasn't easy, untangling decades of conditioning, but it felt like the necessary, painful start of something fundamentally new. I wasn't the family fixer anymore. I wasn't going to be. They could figure out how to navigate their own choices and clean up their own messes. When my parents and Olivia finally returned from their truncated, disastrous trip, I made a decision. I drove over to their house. I was sitting on their porch swing, sipping a takeaway coffee, feeling surprisingly calm when their taxi pulled into the driveway. As they emerged, dragging their suitcases, their faces were a study in exhaustion, irritation, and simmering resentment. Olivia, predictably, was the first to speak, stomping up the walkway. Well, I hope you're happy, Sophia. I raised an eyebrow, remaining seated. Happy about what, Olivia? Our trip. It was a complete disaster, my mom snapped, waving her hand dramatically as if brushing away invisible cobwebs. We spent the entire week staying in dingy, awful hotels and eating terrible food because we couldn't afford anything decent. Thanks to you. And don't even get me started on the tours, Olivia chimed in, crossing her arms petulantly. Oh, wait! There weren't any. Do you know how embarrassing it was to show up at the Louvre and be told there was no reservation under Miller? I took another slow sip of coffee, letting their wave of complaints wash over me before responding calmly. Sounds rough, but you wanted to take Olivia, remember? I'm sure you all had some great, budget bonding time. That is not the point, my mom shot back, her voice rising. You knew we couldn't afford all the luxury things you'd planned on our own. You set us up to fail. Finally, I stood up, setting my mug down. No, Mom, I didn't set you up for anything. I planned a trip, a special, once-in-a-lifetime trip, for the three of us. A trip I'd been saving for years. You are the ones who decided to cut me out, to change the plan at the very last second without even discussing it with me. My dad finally spoke, his tone quieter but laced with accusation. You didn't have to cancel everything, Sophia. That was extreme. Vindictive. Was it? I asked, folding my arms, meeting his gaze directly. Why should I have continued to pay thousands of dollars for a trip I wasn't even invited on anymore? If Olivia needed it so badly, if this trip was so important for her, then you should have planned and paid for it yourselves. You are incredibly lucky I didn't cancel the return flights as well. Olivia rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh my God, you are so dramatic. It's just money, Sophia. And you, I shot back, my patience finally snapping, are so entitled, Olivia. Do you have any idea how much work, how much sacrifice, how many extra hours went into planning and paying for that trip? Or do you just assume things magically appear for you because someone else, usually me, takes care of it behind the scenes? They stood there, momentarily stunned into silence by my directness. I have spent years, I continued, my voice steady but firm, finding its power, being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who fixes things, plans things, makes sure everything runs smoothly for everyone else, and you three have spent just as long taking it all completely for granted. That's not fair, my mom started, but I held up a hand, cutting her off. No, Mom, listen. What's not fair is how you treated me. You chose Olivia over me, like you always do. So, I chose to stop being your doormat. You didn't want me on the trip? Fine. But you don't get to enjoy the fruits of my labor, the benefits of my hard work and planning, without me there. It doesn't work like that anymore. I grabbed my bag from the porch swing, turning to leave. I'm glad you're all back safely, but don't expect things to just go back to the way they were, because I'm not going back. I'm done. As I walked towards my car, ignoring the sputtering mix of anger and guilt trailing behind me, I didn't look back. Thank you for watching Sophia's story of finding her voice on Life Stories. If you've ever felt overlooked or taken for granted, let us know in the comments. And please remember to like this video and subscribe for more stories about setting boundaries and reclaiming your power. You deserve to be the main character in your own life story. See you next time.